Okay, welcome back. I'm here in a brand new scene here in Maya 2009. What we're going to do now is we're going to talk in the next series of videos, we're going to talk about global illumination. So what is global illumination? Before we get started, very quick description of what global illumination is. Basically, global illumination allows you to create realistic indirect illumination in your scenes using mental ray from Maya. So what is indirect illumination and global illumination? Well, if you look in the real world, the way that light works is pretty interesting. Light works based on photons and energy. For example, let's say you're in real life and there's a warehouse. Just a big old building, a structure with no lights inside. It's completely dark inside. There's no lighting whatsoever. But it's a sunny day in the middle of the afternoon and there's windows all over the place. So light can come from the sun through these windows inside the room. Now, how would that room be lit up in the real world? Would the light from the sun simply hit the floor of the room through the windows and that's it? Just die off right there, and then the walls on the inside of the room would be pitch black, totally dark? No, that's not the way that light works in the real world. In the real world, the photons of energy of this light would come from the sun, go through the holes in the windows of this building, hit the floor, bounce off the floor, and hit the ceiling, the walls, and pretty much anything else that it can reach inside until all of the light is absorbed. This is where global illumination from mental ray comes into play. You can use global illumination to mimic this effect from real life. Okay, so enough talk, i3D Jack. Show me what you're talking about. Alright, gladly. Let's go ahead and open up the file browser here, and we're going to open up a scene, and the scene we're looking for is called 02 Scene GI Start. GI being short for global illumination. If we go ahead and render this out, you notice that we already have mental ray set as the current renderer. If it's not, go ahead and set it. And this is what we have by default. It's a pretty simple room scene here with no lights. All we have is the default light from Maya, and that's it. Okay, so our job is to come in here and add some global illumination. So that's pretty easy to do. The first thing I need to do for global illumination is create a light source. And this light source, it can be one light source, it can be two, it can be 5, 6. We can have 20 different lights in the scene. The important thing for getting global illumination to work is to have at least one light, just one light that's emitting global illumination photons. And what are photons? Well, you'll get to see that in a moment. It'll make more sense once you see it in action. So what I'm going to do is go to create lights, and I'm going to create an area light, a Maya area light here. I'm going to go ahead and place that at the top of the window. And if I go to shaded view, you can see what I'm talking about here. So the placement doesn't have to be perfect. Just go ahead and place this however you can. Let's turn this guy here about 90 degrees and maybe move it a little bit further up. I want this area light to encompass this almost entire window here on the ceiling of this room. So what I'll do is I'll scale it like so. Okay, that's good enough. Now I'll come back inside the room here, and I'll go ahead and do a render, and this is what we have. So with the area light selected, let's hit Control A to open up the attribute editor here. Let's do an IPR so we can see the changes update over here in real time. And let's go ahead and work with this. First thing we need to do is add shadows. So let's do that. There's our shadows. Don't look too great. Let's go to the mental ray tab, and let's select use light shape, and that basically turns the light into a mental ray area light. Okay, and let's increase the amount of samples to about 16 so it looks a little bit better. Let's also add some light decay so it looks more realistic, because right now it looks very fake. So we'll add quadratic light decay, and we'll have to increase the intensity. So 100's not enough. Let's try 200. Let's try 500. That may be a little bit too much. Let's try 400. And 400 doesn't look too bad. We'll stick with 400 just for now. And we can always change that later if we need to. Okay, so we have shadows. It's a mental ray area light. And it has quadratic decay. Okay, perfect. Now, photons. To get the global illumination photon mapping to work, we need to do two things. Actually, we need to do three things, but Maya does one of them for us automatically, so it's realistically only two things. The three things that we need to first turn on global illumination in our render settings. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me close this and let me go over here to render settings. And what I'll do is I'll go to the indirect lighting tab over here. Wait for it to load up my indirect lighting there. Okay. And you notice that the first or second section here, second rollout of parameters, is global illumination. So let's just go ahead and activate it. And that automatically turns on global illumination. Okay. Down here you'll see final gathering. What I'm going to do is collapse that just so it gets out of the way. We're not going to be using final gathering, but I just want to get rid of it so I can only focus on global illumination when this menu is open. Okay, so there's global illumination. Let's close that. That's the first thing we need to do to get GI, which is short for global illumination. That's what I'll probably be calling it from now on. The first thing we need to do to get GI to work is to turn it on in the render settings. But you notice that there's no global illumination in our scene. Why is that? That's because we need to do the second thing. Okay, so with the area light selected, let's go ahead and hit Control A to open up the attribute editor. And down under the mental ray parameters down here, we're going to turn on emit photons. Okay, once we do that, you notice that nothing happens. Okay, the reason for that is because we have to go ahead and refresh the IPR. So we'll create a brand new IPR. And there we go. Now you notice that we have this illumination kind of bouncing off the walls and illuminating everything in our scene. Okay, if I turn emit photons off, you notice that the ceiling here is pitch black. This is what I was talking about earlier with the example I made about a warehouse on a sunny day. If this was the warehouse and it's a sunny day and the light's coming in from this hole up here in the ceiling, this window or this skylight, in real life the light would hit the ground, bounce off to the walls, and even hit the ceiling up here. Now by default in 3D and CGI graphics that doesn't happen. With mental ray you can activate photon illumination here using GI, and you can have that effect occur. Okay, so that's what we'll be focusing on in the next couple of videos. Okay, now I did mention that there was a third thing we had to do in order to get GI to work properly. And the third thing, we don't have to do it because Maya does it for us automatically. All objects in your scene that you want to work with GI have to be set to be GI casters and receivers. What this means is that the objects can bounce off the photons from the global illumination coming from the light. By default, all objects in XSI already have this turned on, so we don't have to do it. Oh my gosh. I just said XSI. Editor, edit that out of the video, edit that out of the video, starting again in 3, 2, 1. Now I did mention that there was a third thing we had to do to get GI to work. Well, the third thing is done automatically by Maya. The third thing is to make everything in your scene that you want to work with GI become a photon caster or receiver. What that basically means is that the photons coming from the light can interact with the object. In this case, the object is this room. If this object or the room wasn't set up to be a caster or receiver of photons, then the photons wouldn't be able to hit it, they wouldn't be able to bounce off, etc., etc. And it just wouldn't work out. Fortunately, Maya does this for us automatically, so we don't have to worry about that third step. We only have to worry about the first two, which is to turn on the photon emission for the light and to turn on the photon emission in the render settings. Okay? And that's already done, and we can see the photons here in our scene. These are the default settings. The intensity can be controlled here. We can also control the exponent. The exponent is basically decay rate for the photons, the same way that the decay rate works over here for the main light itself, for the area light. An exponent of 2 is the same as doing a quadratic decay rate. My recommendation is to leave this at the default of 2 for the most realistic decay rate. If you want to, you could change it. I don't recommend you change it unless you really have to, or you really want to for whatever reason that your project needs it to. Okay, so I would just leave that alone. And then down here we have these two parameters. We have caustic photons and global illumination photons. Caustic photons we're not going to pay attention to for now, because we'll see a couple of videos later down the road in this tutorial on how to use caustics, so we're not going to worry about that at the moment. Global illumination photons, on the other hand, are important for what we're doing right now. Right now, we can see that we have this blotchy effect here in our scene, and it's very bright. We can control the brightness of this using this photon intensity right here. Okay, so we can actually drop that intensity, and we can watch it update interactively in the IPR, which is simply fantastic. And we can continue to drop this, and I think a setting of about 4,000 is going to look pretty good for this scene. Okay, and the light's brightness is a little bit too much. Maybe we should drop it to about 300. Okay, that looks much better. That way I don't have that bright spot over here on this wall. Okay, now, what's controlling the look of these photons? Why do we have this nasty blotching effect that makes it look like this was some old apartment that had a fire in it recently? Well, the reason for that is the quality. Now, I'm not going to focus about the quality in this video. All I wanted to do is get this scene set up and get you going here with global illumination and get it activated and get it actually working. In the next video, we're going to work on tweaking this effect and actually making it look pretty good and getting rid of a lot of this blotchiness and a lot of these artifacts that are occurring because the global illumination solution right now is just not high quality. Right now it's preview quality, and that explains why it's rendering so fast. Okay, so that's going to do it for this video. I'm going to end this video here, and in the next video I'm going to go more in depth about global illumination photons, and we're going to look at all the options and settings and how to optimize this a bit, tweak it, and make it look right.